let's switch gears a bit. We're going to talk about another NCD risk factor that affects us, tobacco consumption, to help us understand the history of big tobacco and marketing to children. We have none other than Dr. Bonnie Balpern-Flesher, Professor of Pediatrics, Director of Reach Lab, and founder and Executive Director of Tobacco Prevention. Toolkit. Just invite participants to make sure their mics are muted. Prevention Toolkit, Cannabis Awareness and Prevention Toolkit, and Vaping Information Solutions and Interventions Toolkit. She'll be doing our next presentation, and Dr. Bonnie, I invite you to the microphone.
Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, everyone. I know that you're all over the globe, which is just fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Excited to be here today. All right. A lot to present in 10 minutes. Can you see my slides? Are we good?
You're great.
Great. Thank you. A lot to present, so I'm going to go a little bit quickly, but happy to answer questions or even provide additional information on anything I'm talking about. So first, I always like to give a shout out to the Reach Lab, several of members of whom are on this today, including Dr. Marcia Zaria, who will be speaking to you a little bit later. And then our Youth Action Board, also several members are here today. Special thanks to our funders. And then I do need to just pause for a second for a couple of important disclosures. I am an expert scientist against for some litigation against e-cigarette industry, and an expert in some policies across the city, state, and country of the United States. So early tobacco marketing, what are we talking about there? First of all, it's really important to know that early on, the tobacco marketing was completely unregulated. So as a result, we saw ads that very much targeted youth. One that literally said, "Young America," here, one that said that here, an advertising with a relatively sexy woman, but the term young America was absolutely there. So not even hiding the fact that youth are being targeted. Then there were lots of examples of tobacco ads that were embedded into cartoons. So here's one, Happy Joe Lucky, and it's actually Lucky Strike is a brand of tobacco or cigarettes. Lucky's taste better, but it's embedded into a cartoon strip. That was happening a lot. And then no other than the Flintstones, which was something I watched a lot. When I was growing up, yes, I'm old. When I was growing up, this was very popular, and you can get, and there are videos on this, you can get ads, and actually built in to the Flintstones cartoons for Saturday morning when kids were watching were tobacco ads, particularly Winston. Salem was the brand that they were advertising. And then we saw, up until not long ago, Camel, another e-cigarette brand, had the infamous Camel. I think it's too early in the morning for me. The influence of Camel, and then the Camel cartoon, this Camel Joe, was very common. And things like I Like Joe on the far right, which is more of a political advertisement. But these were very, very popular with young people. And there's lots of science that all of these kinds of ads would actually target young people, that all of these ads are appealing to young people. And when young people see these ads, they're significantly more likely to then go on and want to use these products. We also saw, and sadly sometimes still see, tobacco being advertised in sports, and particularly baseball. And baseball was not just cigarettes, but also smokeless tobacco chew. You see that a lot with baseball players having this big wad in their jaw and spitting it out. There are thankfully some cities like San Francisco, near where I am, actually banned the ability to have chew on their baseball fields, which is great. But you still see these advertisements, and these are advertising a lot to our young people, and particularly our young boys and our young boys of color. And we also saw early on, and this is not just youth, but I think it's really important to bring this up, and we can maybe discuss this during the Q&A, and we're still seeing this today, is menthol. And menthol is a flavorant that hides the poison, basically, and it's a numbing effect. It makes the poison go down from the tobacco, makes the poison go down easier. And these products were absolutely and still are being marketed particularly to communities of color, youth and adults, but communities of color. And you can see that here. And this is why it's so incredibly important that menthol is a flavor that we get off the market, because it is absolutely targeting our young people and people of color. So what else was happening in advertisements that were attractive to young people? One is these misperceptions or misclaims like marble lights or ultralight or low tar, green label, those kinds of things that you're seeing here. And this was not just targeting youth, this was targeting everybody. But people have done papers. We actually published a paper several years ago that showed that teenagers see these terms and think that it means that these cigarettes are less harmful. The problem is that they're not less harmful. We know that lots of studies really looking at the chemical ingredients show that these lights and low tar are just as harmful, if not more, because people inhale them deeper into their lungs, are just as harmful as any other tobacco product that we might see in any other cigarettes. So that was another problem. And then we still see this, just less, but depending on the product, these colorful and flavorful other tobacco products like smokeless and cigars and so on. And you can see, like with the skull or the bottom left here with the small cigars and the orbs, the snus, the smokeless, they look like candy. And young people say, there are lots and lots of examples of kids seeing a table of products like this and the candy, and they can't tell the difference. These are attracting our young people by their colors, their packaging, and their flavors. So what we really know, and from lots of science, and again, anybody who's interested, message me, email me, and I have my email at the end, and I'm happy to send you actual articles on this. But the data really show that tobacco companies use these marketing strategies to shape the consumer and potential consumer perceptions of risks and benefits. And that we know that if you change people's risks, if you lower their perception of risk and increase their perceived benefits, they're more likely to think that these products are acceptable and more likely to use these products. And there are lots of examples of that. And we also know that if you target youth and you get them to use your product, you've got a lifetime user because of the high levels of nicotine and addictive potential. So that's why targeted marketing towards youth was so incredibly used and powerful. Now, thankfully, in 1998, we had the Master Settlement Agreement in the United States. This was signed by 46 states, or brought to bear by 46 states across the country and the District of Columbia. And what wound up happening in this Master Settlement Agreement in 98 was it forbids cigarette companies, note cigarettes, from marketing to youth, either directly or indirectly. It also had restrictions, not completely restricted, but restrictions on advertising, marketing, and promotional activities and programs, like in sports bars, or it's not sports bars, sporting events, for example. Banned or restricted the cartoons like Camel Joe, or advertisings on transit, buses, etc., and most outdoor areas. Restricted product placement in media and or on merchandise. Restricted a lot of the sponsorships that cigarette companies were doing to make their products look appealing, and prohibited free product samples except in so-called adult-only facilities. Then in 2009, the Tobacco Control Act was signed into law by President Obama. And this was an additional act that gave the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration of the United States, authority over the tobacco industry, and particularly formed the Center for Tobacco Products, which, by the way, is hiring a new director. If anybody's interested in applying for, I don't work for them, but we need a really, really, really strong tobacco control person in that role. But what the Tobacco Control Act of 2009 did is it basically said, and the most important things are no sales to people. At first it was under 18, then it finally moved to under 21. No health claims in advertising, and explicit quick claims. So you couldn't have advertisements anymore that said low tar, light, ultra light. That was a good thing. You couldn't have those words, and you couldn't have words like this is less harmful than, unless you had clear evidence. but it did not restrict flavors or television ads and radio ads for electronic cigarettes. This is important to note. When I said before, it was cigarettes. It did not touch flavors or ads or sponsorship or internet sales or endorsements or claims around electronic cigarettes. So what was happening is, first of all, in terms of the cigarettes, you couldn't use terms like light. So what happened? The tobacco industry became very creative and moved to special blends like this that was used in colors and 3 minutes, sorry, I'm almost done. So we have different colors here, and we know that youth actually, and we have publications on this, that youth can interpret these colors. We know that also, because we don't have restrictions on advertisements, we have all kinds of advertisements that are really targeting to youth like these. Finally, we have juice boxes, e-cigarettes that are packaged to look like kid juice boxes. We have all the flavors that are still available for kids right here, including 15,000 tobacco flavors like dragon's blood and honey doo-doo and unicorn poop. And we know from our studies that these flavors explicitly target youth, and the industry says, no, they're not targeting youth. The science says they do. And we did some of our own studies, again, happy to share these papers, that showed that when you show teenagers these kinds of ads, they say it's targeting people my age and slightly older. What 18-year-old doesn't want to be 20 or 21 or 25 and younger? We also see these ads, and I won't play this whole thing, but these ads on Quizlet, which is a teen homework helper, that e-cigarettes are being advertised on those. So to end, we need science, we need youth voices, and we need you to change these policies to eliminate and regulate the marketing to young people. We need to advocate so we have no marketing that can even possibly target young people, because of the clear evidence that that is happening, and that we need to change that if we're going to get young people not to be using e-cigarettes anymore or any tobacco product. Thank you, and I apologize for going over.
Thank you, Dr. Bonnie. I mean, just your presentation and what you said about the manipulation of the concept of risk in people's minds is just shocking. And the fact that we, youth, are the target of a lot of these marketing strategies means that we, like I said at the beginning, we have a lot to say about them in our advocacy.